bring in the jury. Show the presence of the jury, the defendant, and all counsel. Mr. Nurmi, you may continue with cross-examination.
Judge, is the screen on?
Yes.
Detective, when we, before we broke for the lunch break, we were about to talk about Exhibit 351. I asked you about the tail end of that, and you needed your recollection refreshed on that, and I'm going to play that for you now, okay?
Okay.
Let's move to after the breakup.
Oh, okay.
What kept you in Mesa at that point?
I actually moved to
Let's move to after the breakup.
Oh, okay.
What kept you in Mesa at that point?
I actually moved to Mesa a few weeks after we broke up.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I mean, as far as the timeline goes. But, I mean, if you want to call it our official breakup. Shortly thereafter, it's like we were still seeing each
So
other.
you guys were seeing each other, but it was a long distance type relationship.
It was always long distance when we were officially dating. We dated from about the beginning of February to about the end of June. So February, March, April, May, June, about 5 months total.
Okay. In June of 2007, you guys broke up, and then you
June
moved to
29th.
Mesa.
Yeah, I moved to Mesa sort of.
Most people, when they break up, they kind of go
I
their own
know,
way.
plans were already in order for me to move there. I was already speaking with a friend who was, was going to be her roommate, and I was her roommate for a short time. She's kind of flighty. She's a great girl, though. I had talked to Travis about maybe going to Southern California instead.
Okay.
And he's really persuasive.
They persuaded you to stay there in Mesa.
He kind of was playing up all the advantages if I did come to Mesa, and if I did, he said, it's a great place. We could still see each other and hang out on occasion. This church is very strong. You'll make a lot of friends. And I already knew all this stuff prior because we talked about that. And so I went ahead and just made the move. It sounded at the time like a good idea.
And you guys continued to kind of see each other at that time?
Yeah, at the time I was sort of living more across town over by Greenfield. Do you know where that is?
Yeah.
It was up Greenfield near Broadway. Greenfield and Broadway were the nearest cross streets. And that's where the girl that I was originally talking with, I moved in with her.
Yeah, it's kind of like
Yeah.
childhood.
Yeah. The thing about her, and just to give you a background of why I moved suddenly, she approached me the weekend after I got there and said, hey, she knocked on my door, can I talk to you for a second? I said, sure. And she moved in with her boyfriend, and they were engaged.
Okay.
And she said, hey, I just wanted to let you know that Scott and I went to Vegas last weekend to tie the knot. And I was like, really? She's like, yeah, we haven't told anyone, but we didn't want to live in sin. So we're going to, and she had already been sealed in the temple once and was waiting for her cancel. Her
sealing to be
to be canceled. So they were going to have a civil wedding on the beach in Oregon. And they did that the following weekend. She told me that on a Monday or Tuesday. It was the beginning of the week. And she said, the reason I'm telling you that is because I'm getting married this weekend, and I have to go out of town a few days ahead of Scott, to make arrangements. and now that he's a married man, we don't feel it's right that you be here in the house.
Yeah.
She's like, I don't want to inconvenience you, but is there any way you could stay with somebody else or just find another place? At the time, I was waiting on a house in Gilbert, because I already knew they were getting married, so I was kind of looking anyway. And there was a great girl named Brenda, and she was waiting on her keys for the mortgage to go through, and it was a great ward, it was a great house, and it was brand new construction and all that. It was really nice, but she didn't get her keys for months and months. I think she's in the house now, but I don't know, I haven't talked to her. So I scrambled. I went to the Institute, I wrote down a bunch of phone numbers, I called them all, a lot of them, I got voicemails. One girl that answered, her name was Tiffany, and she knew Travis, and she was at his services in Arizona and as well, and we've just remained friends sort of like on MySpace and Facebook and that kind of thing. But she said, hey, sorry, that's an outdated posting, I forgot to take it down, but go to this website. So ldshousing.net, I went there. I made 3 phone calls for the places that were within my price range. I didn't think to look where they were. The one girl that called me back, her name was Shannon Darricott. She said, here's my place, here's the directions, go ahead and go out and come see the house. It was available, so we did.
Oh, go ahead.
You have to get that?
No.
Okay. So I moved out there, and when Travis found out it was so close to him, he freaked out about it. And I made sure to check that it wasn't, that we wouldn't be in the same ward. And it was within his ward boundaries, but it was also within another singles ward boundary. So of course I'm gonna go the other one, because it would just be kind of weird. I mean, I didn't know about him and Lisa at first.
Does that refresh your recollection, Detective?
Yes.
What was said? Okay. At the very end there, she says she didn't know about him and Lisa. Did you hear that?
Yes, I heard that.
Okay. Based on your investigation, who is that reference to?
Might have been a girlfriend, I guess, of Travis's or
Okay.
something.
Does the name Lisa Anders ring a bell?
That sounds familiar.
Okay. She was interviewed in part of your investigation, right?
I don't remember. She might have been. We talked to a lot of people.
Okay. You talked about, and you've heard other witnesses talk about this mysterious email that she received, so you don't remember talking to her now? This so-called threatening email, tire slashing, you don't remember that now?
Yes, I do remember.
Okay, okay. And that was Lisa Anders, right?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. And in your investigation, you came to understand that Mr. Alexander, and I'll use the word dating, was dating Miss Anders and Miss Arias at the same time. Is that correct?
I don't remember the specifics. You're going to have to talk to Lisa about that.
Don't remember. Okay. And we also saw you in the course of these interviews said, you told Miss Arias that you don't think she planned it, something got out of control, correct?
Yes.
Is that more technique?
Yes.
Chalking
it is.
that up to technique? Okay. You also said you do not see a cold-blooded murder. Again, is that going to be technique?
Yes, it is.
Okay. During one of these interviews, or your interview on the 15th, one of the clips, Miss Arias said to you, no reason she would ever want to hurt Travis, harm Travis. And your comment was, I don't think you ever wanted to. More technique?
Yes.
Okay. Now, these techniques, they're very specific for interrogations, correct?
They're not too specific, no.
Well, they're for interviewing and interrogating suspects, right? It's a little, we talked about the difference.
Yes.
It's techniques that you employ on a suspect.
Yes.
Okay. So, when you were interviewed, and we talked earlier that you were interviewed by a news program, CBS 48 Hours, right?
Yes.
Okay. And you would then have no need to employ any of these tactics when you're being interviewed by a reporter, right?
No.
Okay. So if you repeated some of these same techniques when you were engaged in that interview with CBS, or you said some of these things, that wouldn't be techniques, right?
No, it wouldn't be techniques.
No, it wouldn't be techniques. You'd have no reason to use it. So why would you say some of these same things?
Some of the techniques I believed. Some of them were
So
true
they're not
beliefs
all
that I
techniques.
believed.
They're not all techniques. Some of them are what you believed, right?
Techniques are some truths that you do believe, and at that point, when I was interviewing her, I was just kind of reaching at things. I didn't know where she was going with the story.
Okay. And,
So of course, I would reach out and try to figure out where she's coming from.
okay. And this interview you had with the correspondent from 48 Hours on CBS, that was subsequent to the July 15th and July 16th interviews you did with Miss Arias, correct?
Yes, it was.
Okay. Several months, correct?
Yes.
Now, I wanted to clear up something as well. You had several interviews with Miss Arias. We've heard snippets or portions of phone calls that began the day that you arrived on the scene or perhaps the day after, and many throughout the course of your investigation, right? Maybe
Yes.
half dozen or so?
I don't remember the exact number, but
Does that sound about
yeah,
right?
there's a few.
Okay. During any of those times, did she tell you that she worked at a place called Margaritaville?
I don't remember.
She told you all along, as she did in there, that she worked at a place called Casa Ramos. Isn't that correct?
I remember during one interview, she mentioned Casa Ramos.
Okay.
I'd never heard of it before. So.
Okay. Now, going back to what we said before about your training on deception, before lunch, we talked about how there's an element of truth in a lie to make it plausible, right?
Yes.
Okay. Let me run back over then some of the things. In this last snippet we saw over yesterday and today, she told you a story about intruders entering the home, right?
Yes, she did.
One male, one female, right?
Yes.
Okay. And during this story, and we heard her say that she ran into a closet, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And we also heard her say that Travis was shot but still alive, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And she also mentioned, and she even physically indicated, that she got hit on the back of the head, right?
Yes.
Okay. And she also said that there was a knife involved and a gun involved, right?
Yes, she did.
Okay. And in her story of the two intruders, the female half was the aggressor, right? She did the shooting, she did a lot of the activity, right?
Yes, that's what she
Okay.
told me.
Okay. She also said that he was bleeding everywhere, right?
Yes.
And he being referring to Travis, right?
Yes.
Okay. And she also said that she was wearing striped pants, right?
Yes, she did.
Okay. She said she was scared, right?
Yes.
Freaked out of her mind, right?
Yes.
I have no further questions.
Redirect.
Sir, with regard to this issue of techniques, you were asked about that on your cross-examination. How those techniques work out for you during this interview?
Not very well.
Why do you say that they didn't work out very well for you?
I never got the truth.
What are you talking about?
She never really told me the truth about
Well, what did she tell you initially? That was she there or not?
No.
Is that the truth?
No, it was not.
She also told you a story about two people doing it. Is that the same story as the one that she told you before?
No, that was a completely different story.
And she was there on this one, right? On the second one she told you, right?
Yes.
And is that what she has, is that the story that she has kept to, or is there a different story now?
It's a different story now. She says she was there and she did it.
So again, these techniques that you're using, tell me a little bit more about your training on these techniques?
Approximately 40, 50 hours of training for interview interrogation.
And with regard to these techniques that you use, in this case, given what you know that she now says she did it, did they work at all?
No, not really.
When you say not really, it implies that they did. How did they work? You tell me how they worked.
Well, there were some truths in there, but the majority of it,
And some
It's
truths you
false.
don't know which is true and which isn't, right? Do you?
no, I don't.
She told you in the second interview that the shot was first, right?
Yes,
And she told you that the shot was first and that the shot was first by somebody else, not her, right?
yes, correct.
And you indicated to me just now, well, there was some truth to it. Is that something that you believed at the time that she told you that the shot was first?
Yes, I actually did believe that.
And is that the position that you adopted after she told you that?
Yes,
Is that your position that you had when you spoke to Dr. Kevin Horn in anticipation of whatever hearing you were going to have?
Objection is beyond the scope.
Overruled.
yes, I maintain that belief.
And when you spoke to him, did you speak to him about what your belief was at that time when you spoke to Dr. Horn?
No, not really.
And did you speak about that you believed, Dr. Horn, that you believed based on a conversation with the defendant and on your techniques that you thought the shot was first?
I didn't have that conversation with Dr. Horn.
And when you testified the day after, were you testifying based, at least in part, on what the defendant told you as to what came first?
Yes,
And that was what? What did she tell you came first?
that the shot came first.
She also did tell you other things, that there was blood and that sort of thing, right?
Yes,
You were asked about this issue about whether or not you believed that she was out of control, she was a cold-blooded murderer, did something she didn't want to. Is that what you believe, or is that something that you used to try to perhaps get at the truth in this case?
Objection is irrelevant to what the detective believes.
Rephrase.
Why did you use those phrases, sir?
it was part of my technique to try to figure out what happened.
You were asked about whether or not you went on 48 hours. Do you remember that?
Yes,
And you were asked about having spoken to them, right?
yes,
And you were asked about whether or not there was a technique that was involved with regard to 48 hours, right?
yes,
You've also viewed other interviews of people that gave interviews to 48 hours, right?
yes, I have.
Objection beyond the scope of relevance.
Approach.
between the defendant and 48 hours, correct?
Yes.
And with regard to the story that she gave there, did it differ from the second story that she gave you in huge amounts, the story that she gave you on July 16th of 2008?
The second story?
Yes, the second story.
No, not much at all.
You were asked about the July 16th, 2008 statement that she gave you about who was the aggressor, whether or not the female was the aggressor and that sort of thing. Do you remember that line of questioning?
Yes.
With regard to what she told you, did she ever tell you that somebody held a gun to her head during this interlude or during this incident?
Yes.
Who did she say put the gun to her head?
The male.
And what did the male do with regard to the gun after he put it to her head?
Let her go eventually.
And with regard to, did she ever tell you of anybody looking in her purse? Did she ever discuss that with you during that interview?
Yes.
And what did she say with regard to who was the person that actually looked in her purse?
The male.
So, in terms of this case, did she ever say who did the shooting? Did she ever tell you if she saw who actually, in her story, who did the shooting or who shot Mr. Alexander?
No.
And this is the same person, this story about who's the aggressor. Was this the same person that told you that previously she wasn't there?
Yes.
I don't have anything else.
Anything else, Mr. Nermi?
I do, Your Honor. These 48-hour interviews of Ms. Arias, you seem to have a pretty good memory of them. Is that correct?
Somewhat.
Okay. The interviewer didn't ask all the same questions you did she?
I wasn't there. I don't know. I only saw what was captured on camera.
You saw what was on camera? Okay. As far as what was captured on camera, did the interviewer use the exact same script that you did?
No.
No. She asked more questions, right? Different questions.
Yes.
She asked Miss Arias, she said that this looked like a classic case of domestic violence, didn't she?
I don't recall that
You
one.
don't recall that one? Okay. I'm going to see if you recall questions about Mr. Alexander being abusive towards Miss Arias. Do you recall the interviewer asking her about that?
No, I don't.
Okay. And as it relates to Miss Arias, I'm going to guess you don't remember, but is Miss Arias being Mr. Alexander's booty call? You don't remember that? Or do you?
That somewhat, yes, I do.
That's somewhat
Yeah.
familiar. Okay. And that they discussed the idea that Mr. Alexander would call her late at night requesting sexual favors. Do you remember that being discussed?
No, I don't remember that.
Don't remember that either. Okay. A moment, Your Honor.
Yes.
You told CBS that you thought this was a crime of passion, correct?
No, I don't
No?
remember that. No.
You also told them that something happened and she just snapped. Things got out of control, right?
I remember saying things got out of control, but I don't remember the actual context of it.
Okay. That's all I have for now, Your Honor.
Anything else, Mr. Martinez?
With regard to those comments that you may have made, were those comments based in part on what the defendant told you?
Yes, they were.
I don't have anything else.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I have some questions from you. It looks like we have another question. Any other questions for this witness? Counsel, please approach. right, Detective, the jurors have some questions for you. Were there any sets of knives that appeared to be missing a knife?
No, we didn't find anything like that.
Was the gun that was used to kill Mr. Alexander found in Miss Arias' possession?
No, it was not.
Why were the fibers found at the scene, sandals and pillows, not sent out to compare them?
We didn't feel it was necessary at that time.
When you personally interviewed Mr. Alexander's roommates, was there ever a mention of their concern for his extended absence, June 4 through June 9?
No, they believed he was in Mexico already. They didn't know his schedule.
What were the alibis given by those roommates?
One was working, and the other was actually staying at his girlfriend's home, and they were house sitting for her parents.
Did Mr. Alexander have a boarder or another person living in the house?
No, just the two roommates.
Were the fingerprints of the boarder taken to see if they matched any at the scene?
Yes, they were.
With regard to the knife or gun, was Mr. Alexander's old BMW searched?
No, it was not.
Any other questions from the jury? Follow-up from the state.
Thank you.
Mr. Nermi.
I do have a couple questions. His roommates of Mr. Alexander's, I think you mentioned that the other day. Enrique Cortez, and I'm sorry, could you refresh my memory on the other one? Was it Zach Billings, is that correct?
Yes, Zachary
Okay.
Billings.
And they were both living with Mr. Alexander at the time, right?
Yes.
Okay. And did your investigation reveal whether or not Mr. Billings or Mr. Cortez knew that Jodi Arias was coming for a visit?
They did not know she was coming for a visit.
And based on your investigation, did you obtain any knowledge that either Mr. Cortez or Mr. Billings were warned against this so-called dangerous stalker to call the cops if she showed up?
Objection to the oath,
Overruled.
I had no such information.
No information. Thank you.
Detective, you may step down. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to take the evening recess at this time. Please be back in the designated area downstairs, meeting room A, at 10:25 tomorrow morning, and we will start promptly at 10:30. Please remember the admonition. Have a nice evening. You are excused.
Please stand for the jury.
The jury has left the courtroom. Ms. Wilmot, Mr. Nermi, do you have any additional materials for me to review?
I do, Judge. We have two sets of transcripts in the copy center to review. I know earlier the state said they wanted to make a record, so once he's done doing that, we can bring them to the court. I'm assuming the court hasn't read everything else already, so if he wants to make his record, then we will submit those transcripts afterwards.
Did you want to make your record today or tomorrow?
I'd do it right now. I have it right
All
now.
right.
Get it done.
All right, let me just get my notes. You may proceed.
With regard to issue of the text messages, and I'm citing the transcript dated June 18th, 2010, before Judge Duncan. and the person that is testifying is Michael Melendez. And he was asked, amongst the items seized was a cell phone pocket PC, right? We've talked about that before. And he answered yes. The question was, okay, so you know to which item I'm referring to? And he answered, is that Mr. Alexander's phone? The answer was yes, and then he said yes. The question was, okay, you looked at that phone, you powered it on, correct? He answered yes. And did you or did you not find text messages on there? His answer, I did. Question, okay, you did, and the answer yes. Question, did you read those messages, the content, the verbiage? His answer was yes. Okay, and what do you recall of that, was the question. His answer, I don't have any recollection specifically. I know I did note some of them in my report. The answer, okay, were you able to download those messages from the cell phone pocket PC? He answered, I was not. He was asked, describe for us why you weren't able to do that. He said, at the time, I did not have any software that would give me the capability of doing that. And then he talks about it in other portions of this particular transcript, but it does indicate that this issue involving the text messages has already been discussed, and that Detective Melendez has already indicated that he was unable to download the text messages from Mr. Alexander's telephone because the technology or the software wasn't available. That's what he testified to. In the argument that was presented to you previously, after the person from Verizon testified, he and the person from Verizon, Jodi Citizen, indicated that they didn't keep these text messages other than 2 or 3 days. And defense counsel sort of saddled on that and said, well, see, they were there and the state just wouldn't turn them over to us. I would like to mark this as an exhibit, and then I'll have you read it. There's other references to this. It also talks about the email messages and what happened. And I ask that you consider that with regard to the present motion involving the text messages. And I do have other issues. But...
All right. That document will be marked as an exhibit and admitted for purposes of the court ruling on the motion for mistrial.
It may be duplicitous. We're certainly not objecting to that. We do have the other testimony of Melendez as well, and that's what we'll be furnishing to the court later. I can't recall the dates, the specific dates, but there were other hearings, and we'll be providing those transcripts to the court.
All right. Do you want further argument on this issue, this request for mistrial?
Judge, the only thing I would make note of as it relates to this in terms of misconduct, the prosecutor, when I raised this issue, went forward and said, oh, you know, I think that all Hispanic names must sound alike, implying I'm racist, that I'm being insincere about my efforts, or that I'm not very smart. Yeah, I think that's demonstrative of the idea that the emperor has no clothes here, Judge. There is contradictory testimony he's elicited. I'll let the transcripts speak for themselves. But I point those things out because that's an additional instances of misconduct that's inappropriate on the part of this prosecution and should not be tolerated by this court. And that's all I have to say on that. I do have one more record to make, and then we will be done.
Mr. Martinez?
Yesterday, defense counsel requested that an item that had been in the possession and available for the last, since approximately July of 2008 and available for inspection, be turned over to them. And this is the first request that was ever made. It involved Mesa Police Departmental item number 4022827, which is a camera. Ostensibly, it belonged to the defendant. It was seized from one of the homes that was searched up in Wairika, California. I had that marked as exhibit number 364. The request was made before lunch. The item was brought over during the lunch hour. I had it marked as exhibit number 364, and it was released to the defendant yesterday after their request. The other issue involves, there was a witness by the name of Gus Searcy that was just noticed. I think it was noticed either Monday or Tuesday, maybe Wednesday of this week. I know it's this week. I'm not asking for preclusion, but I'm asking for consideration. And that consideration is that he be made available in Phoenix for my interview during this hiatus that we will be taking. So I ask that he be ordered during the next week to be made available so that I can interview him.
Mr. Nurmi, do you wish to be heard?
On either of these matters.
Yes, the recitation of the facts regarding the camera, just for the record, is accurate. My expert picked it up from your clerk yesterday, I believe it was. As it relates to Mr. Searcy, for the reasons we've stated in ex parte, we believe that that would not be appropriate at this time.
The court will take the state's request to interview Mr. Searcy under advisement and will rule in the future on that request. Mr. Nurmi.
The only other issue I have is that yesterday we were given the understanding that the state would be calling Lisa Andrews. She was known as Andrews at the time. My understanding now is that her last name is Diodone. The information we have on her, at least in terms of her telephone number, is probably at least a year, if not more so old. So we were asking that the state provide us with that contact information and that any subpoena issued to her remain in effect.
Mr. Martinez.
She called me during the break, and I spoke to her. I will call her, and if she wants me to facilitate this contact, I will. If she wants to speak with the defense attorney directly, that's fine with me. I will take care of it today. I'll call her as soon as this is done. I don't know if the question was being asked, but just so that there is no question about it later, because memories fade, including mine. The reason I did not call her involves this issue of the stalking. I know that defense counsel spoke about stalking in opening statement. And I also know that Mimi Hall, or Marie Hall, spoke about it, saying that when she came to the door, she was speaking with her mother because she was afraid of a stalker. We never made any, or we never indicated that the stalker was the defendant. That information came from defense counsel in opening statement. Ms. Diodone would have testified, and I'm concerned that should there be a conviction, I'm not saying there's going to be, that an issue like that is so inflammatory that some court may say something to the effect that, well, the jury could have possibly considered this improper evidence of stalking in their decision and may have been inflamed under 401, 402, and 403. I know that the defendant has not moved in limine to do this, but this is more of a self-governing move on my part. What Ms. Diodone would have testified, and what she told me about, was that she spent, it was December of 2007, that she spent some time with Mr. Alexander at her house. It was raining, and that when they were inside the house, there was a knock at the door, and they went outside to look. And this was during the time when the defendant was living in town. She went outside, and Mr. Alexander's tires were slashed. He then got them replaced the next day. He came back the next day, and and then again somebody came to the door. His tires were again slashed. And at some other point, maybe the next day, her tires were slashed. The tires on her car were slashed. She, when they were inside after finding that her tires had been slashed, she was concerned that her safety was at risk, and she asked Mr. Alexander to spend the night with her. She would have testified that they did not have any sexual contact that night. But he did stay the night. The next day, and she remembers the date as December 8th of 2007, she received a letter from supposedly the stalker, but it came from a John Doe, accusing her of a number of religiously based sins, such as you're an unworthy whore, things like that. And so my view is that if I introduce that type of evidence, or if somehow that finds itself into the record, there is a strong potential, in my view, that somebody who may review these proceedings would find that the conviction may have been tainted under 401, 402, or 403. So that's the reason why I chose not to call her. I just don't want to run that risk.
Right.
Your Honor, I believe the state's so-called concern is ultimately disingenuous, because a review of the evidence will show, first of all, I don't need the advice from him. And there is exculpatory evidence. We've also, that Ms. Andrews, or Diodone, has to offer. She was dating Mr. Alexander at the same time that he was sleeping with my client. The other issue is that there has been evidence of her as a quote-unquote stalker that the state has elicited. So I believe it's disingenuous. I believe I'm within my, he's basically trying to imply that there'll be an IAC claim somewhere down the road. Let the chips fall where they may, but strategically, we believe the position is that calling her as a witness is appropriate, and we intend to do so. So I don't know if he's asking for preclusion or what exactly the state's motion is, but we fully intend to do it and request the information.
I'm not asking for any relief. I'm just sort of indicating for the record why I'm not sure it's a good idea that she be called. All he needs to do is to give me a date and time, and I will inform her of the date and time that she needs to be here. I know that that may not be something that he can do right now, but I will call her, I will speak to her today, and I will indicate to her that she is still under the admonition and that she is not to watch anything, not to do anything with regard to, or speak to anybody with regard to this case, and that she is going to be asked to come down and testify. I will say that she has been reluctant about testifying, and that's the reason why I indicated that I would act as an intermediary. If they don't want me to do that, I'm fine, but I will make a call to let her know that she probably will be contacted in the future. But if they want me to do it, I'll do it.
She is under subpoena.
She is under subpoena.
All right, then I will order that the subpoena remain in effect. All right.
Her contact information be provided to us?
Sure.
Yes, and he will do that today.
I will do that. I will give her address. I'll call her if it has.
All right. Anything else for the record today?
No.
Address and phone number on Ms. Diodone is our request.
All right. So ordered.
And will the court be, once we come up with the transcripts, will the court still be unlocked, or would you like us to take them to
You're going to be here?
up to chambers?
You can bring them here and she'll bring them up to me.
Fair enough.
Okay, thank you. We're adjourned.